Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Thanks for staying so long. I think this is the last session, so I'm in this dangerous position of being between you and beers or booze and whatever. So hold on with us. We have a 40-minute session now. We're on time, and we will finish on time. This is why I'm here. So, quick introduction of who's on the stage with me. My name's Stephen, I work for WANIFRA. WANIFRA is the World Association of News Publishers. We're based in Paris and Frankfurt. We're a membership organization, and we work for our members, giving them content, publications, events all around the year, all around the world, on trends in the news media industry. And we have a media development department, press freedom department, etc., etc. I lead a department there called the Global Alliance for Media Innovation. What we tried to do when we created this department was to have a place in WANIFRA to look at research and innovation in the news media industry for our members, to try and connect the dots between tech, media, etc., etc. You see why Gen AI is a topic which today is the talk of the town and very important for us. So that's why I'm here, and I created this panel with these people. And first of all, I'd like to introduce Manjiri Carey. She's former news editor of the BBC's AI editorial team. Welcome, Manjiri. She was chosen because obviously she has an excellent perspective on what has been going on at the BBC. So a massive, big public service broadcaster in the last couple of years since the mainstream arrival of Gen AI. Next to her, Sebastian from Berlin and Die Zeit. He has a kind of double hat. He might tell us a little bit more about that. Deputy Editor-in-Chief for Zeit Online, Director of AI. So he's representing in this panel what some call the legacy media, news papers, news publishers. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have Maanas. Now, Maanas has his own tech company, and what he does is he works with news media companies, small and large, but most of them are actually smaller media companies, to try and help them with getting started with AI and, more to the point, Gen AI these days. So that's who you have in front of you, and that's why I chose them. So I have a couple of slides to give you some context, because obviously I realize there's a lot of Gen AI and AI on the South by Southwest program, but what we're going to talk about today is quite niche. It's Gen AI and journalistic content, right? So this has nothing to do with some of the other topics, although we're talking about the same technology. So a very quick context, and I cannot go into too many details because we don't have enough time. But for those of you who are not experts out of here, of our industry, is what you need to know is AI, in some shape or form, today in your media, and more specifically news media, is used at the creation, production, distribution, consumption stage of content production, so articles, images, etc., etc. And some very simple examples of use of Gen AI in news today in most media companies, and especially the large ones: summaries, translations, transcriptions, headlines, news researches, analysis of large data sets, public, legal, financial documents. That's a really big topic. Fact-checking, news story suggestions, chatbots, what have you. And there are others, but I can't go into too many details. Now, in a bizarre twist of fate, my association just released a month ago a survey to try and audit the state of, or what the media professionals think today of where AI is bringing the most value in their operations. It's actually still open, the survey, but I have some results because I bribed my colleagues to give us some stats. So we have about 100 responses, which is quite valuable. And as you can see, the whole spectrum of the media professional profiles are represented. So it goes from the CEO to tech, digital strategy, editorial management, etc. If you journalists in this room still want to take this survey, it's still open until Thursday, which I think is the day after tomorrow. and I can put back the code if ever you need to get it. So just 4 or 5 slides about this. The most interesting points here. 1 out of 2 of the media professionals that were audited say that they're just getting started using AI in their companies. I don't know if this is surprising for you guys or not. On the other hand, if you look, that means 40% of them are already quite advanced in using AI in their companies. Where has it been most, or how has it been most helpful? You can all imagine time savings and productivity increases is clearly the most important topic here. And where? Mostly in newsroom operations. There's another question that I didn't put here, which is where do they want it to go towards? And again, it's newsroom operations. That's where they want to use the most Gen AI, apparently. Where are the main challenges? This is a massive, massive question. Lack of technical expertise, editorial control, and more to the point, accuracy. Integration, so tech problems with integrating with CMS system, cost and resource constraints, ethical and legal concerns, etc., etc. You all know how to read. But I think this is really quite, it'll set the scene for some of our discussions later. Finally, where is the added value today? Is it justified, as the cost, justified? Well, it looks like half of the people say maybe yes, but actually if you look, there's nearly 40% saying we're not quite sure yet. And this is an interesting one. 91% say that it's difficult to value the arrival of AI in their operations. So what I got out of this is 50% of publishers are in early stage of using AI, 11% have widely adopted AI. 90% struggle to see the impact and the ROI, and 57% believe that AI has been worth the investment. So I'd say it's cautiously positive, not negative, sort of positive. So this is kind of what we're going to discuss today. So now to the real experts. Now I think I've given you some kind of context. Hello again. So I'm going to start with Manjui. Oh, that's low. And my question is very simple. When Gen AI, because this is what we're talking about today, became a bit more mainstream, let's say end of November 22 when ChatGPT was released. You were working for the BBC at the time. What was the attitude? What was the strategic positioning, if there was any? And did it evolve in time until today or until a couple of months back?
So you say it's 2022, but at the BBC we've been working with AI for years before that. So I was part of News Labs, which is an R&D department, and we'd been working on integrating some of this tooling way before that. So I'm really clacking, aren't I? We've been working on it for many years. It was only when suddenly the rest of the world started to wake up, and more importantly, our news bosses started to wake up and suddenly see, this is where the next big thing is coming along. So, as I imagine with lots of news organizations, there are people that have been working in it for years, and then people that we're having to bring along on the journey. So you could say vanguard and rearguard, you could say, rogue users and early adopters. See, BBC, I'm breaking things already. Rogue users, early adopters, every organization has everything. So over the last couple of years, it's really about bringing people along, guarding against over-expectation, but also encouraging people to be curious. Fortunately, because we're journalists, we are naturally curious. We are wanting to be maybe along that hype curve more than other organizations. But yeah, I don't think we're alone in the challenges that we've been faced with.
Thank you. Sebastian, how about the site?
So I think when we all had that big ChatGPT moment, we were very quick to jump at these new tools and opportunities and think about how we can use that as a news organization. One angle to this is how can we use it to create better experiences for our readers, our users. Something we do in these cases sometimes is we open a doc and just type, we type down, I think, 4 or 5 pages of ideas, things we could be doing, and we immediately start working on these. The other way to look at this is, and you had this on your slides, is AI as a way of assisting our journalists, helping us in our everyday work. So we gave people access to ChatGPT and kind of started training them up a bit and see how they would use it in their everyday work. So I think we were very quick with this and kind of gave us a head start, I feel. We're at a point now, I would say, and I feel this is the same across the industry, where everyone is kind of assessing where did this get us?
Yeah. Like, as the slides say.
Yeah. Are the products working that we came up with? Have we arrived at features that people want to use? And also internally, have we done enough in terms of upskilling? Have we chosen the right tools? Are we doing enough? So, and the answer, obviously, to both of them is kind of, but there's a lot still to do, and I feel like we're now at a point where we're planning for the next stage of AI, both in terms of the products and as an assistant in the newsroom.
Thank you. Maanas, obviously you have the perspective from walking into so to speak, to a news organizations with a new toy, new shiny toys. What was the attitude? Was there some resistance?
Yeah, no, for me, it's always very interesting because I have to, sort of sell to these guys. And I always tell my team, I see the true colors. So initially, I think there was a lot of saboteurs in the organization, especially because people had that fear that it's going to replace them. It's going to replace their jobs. It's going to, or eat up a part of their responsibilities. But we've always seen every organization have evangelists who really feel that it's going to help them shine and the organization shine. And there's always been those saboteurs or people who really fear for their job when it comes to AI. I feel that proportion has been more 75% saboteurs and 25% evangelists when it started, and now it has reversed because people have really seen some tangible outcomes, whether it's in terms of time saved or whether it's in terms of additional engagement generated with their audience or even monetization opportunities. So I am seeing that proportion becoming more and more towards the evangelist stage. But even then, I think every organization, and not just in media, I think everywhere we would see people who really fear this technology because that's going to really disrupt what they've been doing for 10 years, 15 years, and people who think it as an opportunity for them to shine.
Okay, so some skepticism from the beginning, but depending on the profiles of people, things have evolved and will probably evolve. But we'll talk about the challenges later. I've also planned to talk about some concrete use cases, and again, I'm going to start with Manjiri. Tell us, and I voluntarily gave you each 5 minutes for this because I think it's the most interesting part is to talk about really concrete use cases. Tell us about your most successful project at BBC in the last couple of years, or 2, but you need to keep it in 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay. So the BBC has a very strict policy about using generative AI in front of our users. So if you live in the UK, you're all our customers and our audiences. And because of the nature of the BBC as a public service broadcaster, we have very fixed guidelines on what we can and we can't do. But what we're always trying to do is make our content available more widely to as many people as possible to help educate and inform and entertain. One of the key cases that we've started using, which we have been doing in public, and I'm sure lots of organisations with similar, is translation and transcription. So the BBC doesn't just provide news service for the UK, but also for 42 languages across the world service. So it's a lot of desks in a lot of languages, and that's a lot of content. I can see people doing exercises at the back. This is so cool. Sorry. So we built a platform which automatically would translate curated content from, say, BBC Korean into English. It would make it visible to all the other 42 desks. They could see whether it would be content that was relevant for them. It would then translate it into their language, so Portuguese or Greek, whatever it is. There would be a journalist or an editor that would then check and sub it, and then it could go live. So it was making content go further for minimal cost. So that's value to the public. Other projects that we've been working on that haven't quite gone public yet are, but we've talked about it quite widely, things like transcribing commentary, sports commentary. So if you have, my colleague over there, if you have a relatively small football team, you might not be able to go to the game, but you can auto transcribe the regional commentary from BBC Hereford and Worcester. It will create the blog, the text blog for it, so you can follow it wherever you are in the world. So those kinds of things are coming down the line, and they're giving real value to people that, it's our job to serve. So that's 5 minutes.
Thank you. And just to resonate with the question from before, so you've managed to make 1 or 2 products that were actually useful to your audience and without too much skepticism from the teams, or at least accepted in the end. There were no hassle on that side?
For translation, I would say it was less the teams, because we're giving them more content to work more freely. But the thing we always had to work out was what our audience's opinions were, and it was really regional. So, the Middle Eastern audiences gave us a little bit more pushback on using translated content, because we would always flag it. We'd have absolute transparency that we'd say translation technology was used in the preparation of this article. But maybe the kind of Northern European languages would be a lot more accepting. So nothing is ever fixed. We were constantly iterating, constantly talking about how we could take the next steps. So I think, as Maanas was saying, this kind of technology is a fact of life, and you can huff and puff all you like, but there's no getting away with it.
We're going that way. Sebastian, I don't know if I'm talking to the editor-in-chief of Site Online or the AI hat, or both, but tell us a little bit about your most successful project in the past 3 years at the site.
Yeah, so one thing I think I can highlight is our text-to-speech feature, so the ability to listen to any article on our website. This is not a new thing, but I think over the last couple of months, the quality has improved to an extent that I personally, for the first time, could say I'm sitting at home on my couch listening to an article, and I'm almost forgetting it's not a human being reading it out to me. The advancements there are pretty incredible, and we've seen that the usage of that feature has tripled. So I think one way in which AI is definitely going to change our industry and the way that all of us are going to consume news is that it's going to be made accessible in other in forms and modalities. So a written article can now be listened to when you're on the tube or on the bike. Now the next question is, where are we going to go now? So, we're at a stage where here's the written article, you push play, you listen to that article. But tools like Notebook.LM, they create podcasts, synthetic podcasts out of a collection of sources. So maybe in a couple of months' time, you'll be able to listen to a website, but it's going to play an audio experience that is uniquely created, maybe even personalized for you based on our journalism. Mm-hmm. Obviously, with all the ethical considerations and safeguards and humans in the loop and everything that's involved. But I think we're at the very, very early stages of where this technology is going to go. And although there are mixed opinions, and rightly so, about features like summaries, and there will be use cases where you want to have something summarized for you, several articles, maybe because you're on vacation and you want to catch up with a certain news topic. I think you will see those features, and they will influence the way that people consume journalism. That is not to say that the article is going to go away. The article, especially the way that we write them, is almost like an art form. It is constructed. People have thought about every word of it, every paragraph, and it gives people pleasure to consume it like that, and that's always going to be there. I think the things I just talked about, like listening to this or a podcast, will be in addition to that. And to think about this optimistically, I think it will help people to access news, to consume news.
Mm. I think as an information purveyors, we want to be in the right place at the right time for the right people in the right format. And that's a real challenge at the moment.
It's also a form of personalization. It's not only giving you exactly what they think you want to hear, but actually in the format that you would prefer, which I think might be even more interesting. And that's also why I always talk now about content, producing content, giving content, the quality of the content, and not so much the article. I don't really care if it's written, audio, video, etc. It's content, and it can be the same news content. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Maanas, again, from your point of view, out of one media company, but out of the 50 or so media companies you've experimented with, I actually have a slide from you on this, another QR code. Can you give us an overview of the different projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, as a person, I'm a very data-driven person. For me, any conversation without data is, I'm told I can't swear, but is sort of useless. So what we started out with was that every experiment that we do with media companies will be documented on what is the goal, what is the hypothesis, what is the KPI, and what was the impact. So as you see in that nice little pie chart there, and completely resonating to what Sebastian said, that a lot of people are looking at how to strengthen that audience engagement and first-party data capture. Because we are now living or moving towards a world where the information is going to be disintermediated in a way or the other. When you're asking a chatbot to give you an answer, it gives you less and less motivation to go to a title or to a creator to consume the content. And I personally feel the winners are going to be the ones that are going to give that incentive to come back, that incentive to say, yes, I want to go to the BBC or to the Z to consume that information. And that's reflected very well in the data as well, where more and more people are looking at use cases of strengthening that relationship. I'll give you two very, very interesting examples that we have seen. Actually, before that, all the publishers, everyone that I've talked to who's creating content is looking at AI in two spheres, two key buckets, you can call them. One is how to increase productivity. How can my internal operations become better? How can I discover content better? How can I draft it better? How can I analyze it better? And the second big bucket is on how can I give users a better experience? How can I make it more sticky? How can I make sure that they come back? To the point that you were saying, how can I make it more personalized? So two examples which fall into that big blue part of that pie is one was a regional publisher that writes a lot about wine in Spain. They're one of the biggest publishers now in Spain, in La Rioja. They're called Nuevo Cotrono. They grew from a 1 million audience to a 4 million audience by creating interesting AI experiences, such as polls on their website that were created by AI but approved by their editors. Summaries that were created by AI, but again, monitored and supervised by editors. The second one is an events and media company called Informa, where they were able to increase more and more people to download their reports, to download their events, to really increase the number of people reaching that end of the funnel. So I always tell publishers that, yes, AI has increased the floor because, average content is instant now. But it has also increased the ceiling. You can use AI to create those relationships, to really strengthen your relationship with your visitor. And those are the two use cases that I wanted to highlight.
You mentioned editorial control. In the two examples that you mentioned on the BBC side and Deet side, yes, Gen AI for new forms of content or more content. Was there always editorial control at the end?
Yes.
Yes.
So with audio, the way we've implemented at the moment, it's the original article gets read out, so it doesn't get changed. But we did a lot of quality controls around, like, it would suddenly speak in what sounded like a really foreign language, and it was more around the quality of the audio that we had to check for. We're not changing the content.
So yeah, more checking the quality and not so much the editorial. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Now, with all major shift comes challenges, and I've listed 4. There are many more, but I think those are the most interesting, important, and most spoken about. And because we can't go into details of each one of them, etc., Sebastian, can you tell us a little bit more about tech challenges that you might have had with a Deet site?
So there are at least 2 big challenges related to tech. One is that I think any organization, not just in media, needs to give pretty much all employees access to new tools. And these tools are very quickly evolving. So, and that is a challenge when you do that with 1,500 people. You need to choose the right tools for the right team, for the right use case. You need to analyze the workflows that they have. You need to jump through all legal hoops and get all the clearance in introducing them, and you need to then do the upskilling. So that's, I think, a huge challenge for any organization, and one that will take up a lot of time. But at the same time, that's where I currently see almost the biggest potential for us. There are tools out there around transcription, for example, around handling of really large data sets or sources. If the entire newsrooms were to use them today, that would be a huge change in the way that we work. And so we really need to, I think, push more and move from the stage of, ooh, look at this is fun to play with, more to, okay, hello, I'm going to be with you for 4 weeks to see how you work and see how a tool can help you. So that was the one challenge. The other challenge around tech is suddenly we needed someone in the organization who knows how an LLM works, or natural language processing. We had those machine learning experts, but we had to hire talent. We have to acquire talent, which for a lot of journalistic organizations isn't easy because we're associated with journalism. So it's not as easy to find tech talent. But I think we need more of that in the organization, at least to some extent.
Yeah, I think just to carry on with your point as well, like there's almost like a new breed of journalists, I think maybe Sebastian and I are part of, which I tend to call bridge journalists. So they're people that can talk to technical colleagues, but can also speak reporter. And it's a really valuable task at the moment, and there's not many of us. So people have got kids, like valuable career choice right now. But from the kind of ethical point of view, which I think is what Stephen wanted me to talk about. So BBC is a public service broadcaster. We're funded by the public. We have to always make sure not just that we're doing the right thing for the right reason, but for the right people, and the right people are our customers, and that's everybody in the UK and everyone that uses the word service. So it's fun and it's cool to do nice stuff with shiny tools, and it's great fun. But as Sebastian says, it's cool to play with toys right now, but that has to be sustainable, and it has to fuel the culture change. Like I said, these technology is not going away. We have to learn how to use it for the benefit of our users, so that we're providing value to them, whether it's giving them more content in the languages that they want to consume it in, or giving it to them in a format that they prefer, giving them context, because what we're trying to do is help people navigate their lives and participate in their democracy or the way that they conduct their day-to-day lives, and we should be giving them the information to help them do that in whatever format they prefer, because they are our bosses, our bosses are our bosses, but they are the real bosses.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the BBC were one of the first to actually publish guidelines as to public guidelines as to how they use or you use AI.
Yeah. So lots of media organisations have got these guidelines now that give you information about how people that work for them are expected to use it. I don't know if the BBC was the very first, but we were maybe one of the published the most wide-ranging, maybe, yeah. But these documents are living documents, because what applied 6 months ago does absolutely not apply now, because the pendulum is always swinging. We always have to make sure that we're reflecting what real life demands.
It's life on the fast lane. Maanas, you mentioned company culture, Manjiri. You wanted to tell us a little bit about what you've experienced there as the biggest challenge.
For me personally, the company culture has become or has been the biggest roadblock in terms of conceptualizing something and getting some ROI out of it. I can't even tell you the number of times an evangelist has called me up and said, you know what, my CTO is not allowing me to do this because he wants to, or he or she wants to do it. So that company culture of, managing egos, making sure people who feel that this is their responsibility or this is their KPI, or managing that fear that, hey, is this replacing what I was doing, or is it actually not letting me shine and replacing me with that system, has been the biggest challenge, especially in terms of enterprises, right? Because the more number of voices, the more kind of noise will become amplified, and really that culture of being able to think about an ROI and not having friction from different stakeholders has been my biggest challenge. And something that Sebastian also touched on is just the organizational structure as well, because that is completely altered now, where there is a LLM specialist that needs to be brought in. There needs to be someone who actually is completely dedicating to what is happening every day, the new developments that are happening. How do they keep on pace, because everything that we are working on, or any organization is working on, there is an 80% chance that in 3 months that would be changed and would evolve, and making sure the systems are getting updated, the technology is getting updated, the systems are talking to each other. So really being able to enforce the fact that, you know what, this is not an option anymore, and it needs to be embedded in that culture, for me has been the biggest challenge in driving ROI out of it.
And presumably you don't move as fast in a big organization that might be a legacy media, been around since the 1800s, as in an agile, much smaller startup.
For sure.
To not mention any precise example, but that's something I've experienced quite a lot. On the legal challenge, I'm going to take this one, because some of you might have seen that my organization, OneIFRA, published a month ago, almost day to day, a call alongside two big organizations, the EBU, which is the European Broadcasting Union, and FIPP, which is a little bit like OneIFRA, but for the magazine, press magazine. It's also an association. And we stood together in calling to AI companies, basically to well, we basically asked for 5 principles to be respected, and the first one is obviously the authorization of the originator of the content. So the news publisher making the content should obviously be giving authorization to its users for training the Gen AI models. Also, obviously, these should be fairly recognized, and the original news source should be quoted. And the last 2 principles are basically agreeing that plurality of news media will, in any case, be useful for anyone, including the people using the content, the end users, but also the tech companies that are actually training on these models. And of course, encouraging a formal dialogue between the AI companies and the content producers. So these principles were published together with the 3 major organizations a month ago, and had some interesting impact. So that's what I wanted to say about the legal aspect. We're getting towards the end. We have another 7 minutes. And instead of doing a conclusion and a summary, which would kind of be repeating what you've already said very clearly, we've spoken about, obviously, the AI, Gen AI, tech companies, and the incredible impact and also positive impact on our newsrooms today. We've spoken about our companies, media content producers, but we haven't actually spoken much about the user. And I've quoted someone here we work with quite closely, David Caswell with OneIFRA. I don't know if he might be in the room. That's why I thought I'd put his name there, just in case you recognize the quote. But it's really about, isn't it the audiences and the users who will ultimately decide how, where this is going? And shouldn't we also keep that in mind and be really focused? I was wondering if you had a comment, any of you, on this.
So this is a bit where Sebastian and I kind of disagree a little bit, isn't it? So the chat in journalism circles at the moment is the death of the article. So I know you seem to be a big fan of the kind of structure of the article, which is the inverted pyramid. So you have all the information at the top, and then you have less information as you go down, because in the olden days you would just cut from the bottom and you didn't want yeah, you all know that already. So it communicates a very specific story, and that's not how we actually tell stories. So when I tell my son at home what I did today, I will start in the morning and then I go to the afternoon. You do it in a kind of very linear way. And actually maybe that's what we should be doing more of. So, this is how the company started, this is how it grew, and this is how it fell, whatever it is. And a more kind of timeline structure. And that helps people give context, you help them understand stories better, it helps them know what the next steps are. So actually maybe the modular format of news now, where you can move around how you present a story, you can choose, maybe I prefer to consume my stories in a visual way, so you can put all the visual elements at the top, you can arrange it in a way that you prefer to consume the story. AI absolutely helps us do that, and actually now this is a inflection point. drink, where you can, we can actually serve our users, audiences, whatever you want to call it, better. Because now they are in control. We're just giving them the building blocks and the trusted sources, the information, whatever it is, and they can decide how they want to consume it. And actually we're handing over some of that power that lots of media companies have had for a long time to our audiences, users, and that's actually really exciting and important.
Thank you. How can you disagree with that?
I think I can easily resolve any conflict there might be on stage, because as with any transition, I think these things are going to peacefully coexist for a long time. People come to us because they value our curation, they value the way that we put together the story, the way that we present storytelling to them.
And your content.
And
the quality of your content.
The quality of the content. They buy a subscription for us. They open our app in the morning because they're trusted users, consumers of our journalism. That being said, I think for a lot of information that people seek and for a lot of time that they spend on the internet, a lot of that will go to completely new user experiences like ChatGPT. And for journalism, that just accelerates a trend that has been going on for a while, and that is that people spend time on TikTok, on YouTube, on other platforms. They spend time with content creators. Truth be told, that for a very long time, we were not the only source of information and news on the internet. And there are YouTubers that have way more reach than we do, and yet we exist. We play a role in this information ecosystem. I don't know what that's going to look like in a year, to be honest. I just think we're underestimating how rapidly that is changing.
Okay. Maanas?
Yeah, so for me, again, I'm a bit of a data-driven person. So yes, of course, we need to care about the user, ask the user what they want. But this is the most exciting time when it comes to building new products, new strategies. So my go-to answer to that is throw things at the wall and see what sticks. Throw things that you think is important to you as a business, that sort of resonates with your integrity, resonates with your value proposition. And of course, ask the user what they want. Think about the user as well, but really think about how fast can you prototype, how fast you can test and measure what is working, what is not working, and then let the data decide rather than the user decide or the organization decide. Really think about what is I'm not sure how many are familiar with the lean startup cycle, where you ideate, you measure, and you reiterate. This is the time to do that with AI, because it will define how your product will evolve, and it will define how your industry will evolve, to be honest. If you can be in the forefront and claim territories, this is the best time. So really think about how you can prototype fast and really know how to measure what is working, whether it's user-driven or the organization or the organization is driving it. Personally, for me, it doesn't matter. For me, what matters is how you can measure it and see what actually is creating value.
Thank you. My spies tell me we have 1 minute and 44 seconds, 43, for any questions. We finished what we were going to say, but do you have any questions? And is there any option to have microphones? If not, yes, please. There's one question there. Did you hear everything?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last bit?
Yeah. So if I've understood right, is the scenario where you use AI, Gen AI, to combat fake news instead of producing it like some do?
I can share my experience very quickly. So we actually built an agent where a news organization can list the sources that they trust, and whatever information that they publish or collect, it actually goes on to those trusted sources and is able to find which of that information are they able to validate from those sources. So it really, again, depends on the use case, whether you are trying to fact check some very sensitive information which requires manual intervention. but of course, AI is, as I was saying before, is a game changer in every operation. So fact checking is definitely a subset of those operations. And I've seen many use cases. The one that I remember is the one that I shared.
Yeah, maybe not using actual generative AI to do that, because people's relationships with news organizations rely on trusting the work. So lots of organizations have huge departments that just do that. So maybe it would act as a kind of maybe first filter, but I think people might be more hesitant about using actual AI to detect AI without there being a human.
Do you want to add to that, Sebastian?
No, I think the overall problem is that the more untrustworthy AI-generated content there is on the internet, the less trust people put in information in general. No matter how much we fact check, you just tend to not trust anything you see anymore.
What was that expression that was used so much on stage in the other session before? Shit in, shit out?
We promised not to
We promised
swear.
we would not use it. But anyway, thank you very much, everyone. We're 1 minute over time, but I think it was worth it. Thank you.